Colorado Territory, 1870. Rebecca Benson clutched the marriage contract with trembling fingers as her father finished the deal with the marriage broker. The sum, a paltry $50, was all her 24 years of life amounted to in their eyes. 6 years of marriage to Thomas had yielded no children, and after his death from typhoid last spring, her parents had declared her worthless. Barren. Damaged goods. Papers are signed, Mr. Benson, the broker said, counting the bills. Your daughter will join the next wagon of brides heading to Whitetail Creek next week. Rebecca's mother wouldn't meet her eyes as they left the broker's office in Denver. 6 days later, Rebecca stood beside a covered wagon with 4 other women, watching her parents walk away without a backward glance. Don't take it personal, honey, said an older woman named Martha who was organizing the bride wagon. Some folks just can't see past what they think a woman's worth. Rebecca nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. The truth was, Thomas had never been kind or gentle, and in their 6 years together, she'd secretly been relieved each month when her courses came. But now that relief had become her sentence, shipped off to whoever would take a barren woman in a territory where children meant survival. The journey to Whitetail Creek took 8 days through rugged mountain terrain. Martha kept the women's spirits up with stories and songs, though Rebecca remained quiet, staring at the passing landscape and wondering what manner of desperate man would purchase her. Whitetail's a good place, Martha assured them on their final night. Decent folk. Most men looking for wives are hard-working ranchers or shopkeepers. Just be honest about yourselves. Some men want children, others need companionship and help. Rebecca twisted her hands. And what of men who discover they've purchased damaged goods? Martha's eyes softened. I've been arranging these matches for 15 years, child. Men who want guaranteed children don't choose a widow approaching 25. They'll know what they're choosing. When their wagon rolled into Whitetail Creek, Rebecca's stomach churned with anxiety. The town was larger than she'd expected, perhaps 500 souls with a proper main street, church, and schoolhouse. The 5 women were taken to the town hall, where they would meet prospective husbands the following day. Like cattle at auction, muttered one of the other brides. Rebecca couldn't sleep that night. By dawn, she'd resolved to accept whatever came with dignity. If no one chose her, perhaps she could find work as a laundress or cook's helper. Anything would be better than returning to parents who sold their own daughter. Garrett Flynn wiped sweaty palms on his worn denim trousers as he approached the town hall. At 36, he never imagined he'd be desperate enough to seek a mail-order bride, but 5 motherless children had brought him to his knees. Pa, hurry up. His oldest, 10-year-old Samuel, tugged at his sleeve. Miss Wilson said the ladies arrived yesterday. Slow down, son. This isn't like picking a horse, Garrett admonished, though his own heart hammered. Behind him trailed his 4 other children, 8-year-old twins Eliza and Emma, 6-year-old William, and little Margaret, just 4. 2 years since influenza had taken his beloved Catherine, leaving him with a ranch to run and 5 young ones to raise. His sister had helped until her husband's work took them to California 4 months ago. Since then, he'd been drowning, unable to manage the ranch, the children, and the house alone. Remember, he told the children as they approached the hall, we're looking for someone kind who might grow to care for us. Not a replacement for your mother. We know, Pa, said Samuel solemnly. Nobody could replace Ma. Inside, Garrett removed his hat, suddenly feeling underdressed in his clean but worn clothing. Several other men, mostly younger, single fellows, milled about the hall where the 5 women sat nervously. Sheriff Davis oversaw the proceedings, ensuring everything remained respectful and orderly. Garrett's eyes were immediately drawn to a slender woman with chestnut hair seated at the end of the row. She sat straight-backed, hands folded in her lap, her blue calico dress modest and neat. While the other women smiled at the men, she kept her gaze lowered, as though already resigned to her fate. That one looks sad, Pa, little Margaret whispered, following his gaze. Hush, Maggie, he murmured, but he couldn't deny the truth of it. Sheriff Davis called everyone to attention. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome. Each lady will introduce herself. Then gentlemen may approach for conversation. Any agreements reached must be formalized through me before leaving. Let's proceed with dignity. One by one, the women stood and shared brief introductions. When it came to the woman in blue, she rose with quiet grace. Rebecca Benson, widow, age 24. I was married 6 years with no children. Her voice held no apology, but Garrett caught the slight tremble of her hands. I can cook, sew, garden, and keep accounts. Several men shifted uncomfortably at her declaration of childlessness, their interest visibly waning. Garrett, however, felt a peculiar tightening in his chest. Here was a woman stating plainly what others might hide, her apparent barrenness, and facing judgment with dignity. As men approached the women for conversation, Garrett hesitated. His situation was different from the young bachelors. He didn't need a woman to bear more children. He needed a mother for the ones he already had. Go talk to her, Pa, Samuel urged. The sad lady. She doesn't look mean like Mrs. Thornton, added Eliza, referring to their former housekeeper who'd lasted all of 2 weeks. Before Garrett could respond, William and Margaret had already scampered across the room toward Rebecca. Garrett hurried after them, mortified by their boldness. Hello, ma'am, William announced. I'm Will Flynn and I'm 6. Do you know how to make apple pie? Our ma did, but she went to heaven. Rebecca blinked in surprise, then her expression softened. I do make apple pie, though I use cinnamon and a touch of lemon. What's your name? Margaret asked, climbing onto the chair beside her without invitation. Rebecca, she answered, her voice gentler than when she'd made her introduction. That's pretty, Margaret declared. I'm Maggie and I'm 4. I'm so sorry, Garrett interrupted, reaching them. Children, this isn't proper. Come away now. Rebecca looked up, and Garrett found himself caught in the most expressive hazel eyes he'd ever seen. They're quite all right, Mr. Flynn. Garrett Flynn. He extended his hand awkwardly. I apologize for my children's forwardness. I've tried teaching them manners, but they're children, she finished, the first genuine smile touching her lips. How many do you have? 5, he admitted. Samuel's 10, the twins Eliza and Emma are 8. Well, here is 6, and Maggie's 4. Something flickered across Rebecca's face. Surprise, perhaps concern. That's quite a handful. It is, he agreed. Too much for a single father trying to run a cattle ranch. Honesty compelled him to add, that's why I'm here. Not looking for more children, ma'am, but someone to help with the ones I have. Rebecca studied him carefully. Most men want wives who can give them sons. Garrett shook his head. I've been blessed with children already. What they need now is a mother's care. And what do you need, Mr. Flynn? The directness of her question caught him off guard. I need. He paused, suddenly aware of how vulnerable he felt. I need a partner. Someone to share the load. Rebecca nodded slowly. Would you tell me about your ranch? As Garrett described his 200 acres with its small herd of cattle and vegetable garden, the older children drifted over. When he explained how his wife had died 2 years earlier, Rebecca's eyes softened with genuine sympathy. May I ask why you're here, Miss Benson? Garrett ventured. Most women come west for new beginnings, but you seem sold off, she supplied when he hesitated. Her bluntness startled him. My parents arranged this match after deciding a barren widow had no value to them. Garrett frowned. That's a harsh judgment. But one commonly made, she replied. A woman who cannot bear children is considered. Miss Benson, Garrett interrupted gently. In my experience, a person's worth isn't measured by such things. For a moment, Rebecca seemed at a loss for words. Then Margaret tugged at her sleeve. Will you read stories? Pa tries, but he falls asleep. Rebecca smiled at the little girl. I love reading stories. As the conversation continued, Garrett observed how Rebecca addressed each child directly, answering their questions with patience. He also noticed how she occasionally glanced toward the other women, several of whom were already deep in conversation with potential husbands. Would you consider meeting with me again tomorrow, Miss Benson? Garrett asked as their time drew to a close. Perhaps we could talk more about possibilities. Rebecca hesitated. Mr. Flynn, I should be clear. The doctors believe I cannot have children. If that matters to you, it doesn't, he said firmly. What matters is whether you could care for the children I have. I believe I could, she answered softly. But marriage is more than that. Garrett nodded. Yes, it is. That's why I'm suggesting we talk more before making any decisions. For the first time, a spark of hope appeared in Rebecca's eyes. I would like that. The following day, Garrett brought Rebecca to the local cafe for lunch. Without the children present, they spoke more openly about their situations. My sister helped after Catherine died, but when she left for California, everything fell apart, Garrett confessed. I've tried housekeepers, but none stay. The ranch work suffers, the children run wild, and He paused. I'm failing them. Rebecca considered his words. And you think a wife would solve these problems? Not just any wife, Garrett admitted. Someone patient and kind. Someone who might, in time, come to care for them. And for you? Rebecca asked quietly. Garrett met her gaze. I loved Catherine deeply. I won't pretend otherwise. But I believe the heart can expand. Mine as well, she murmured. Though Thomas and I had a marriage of convenience, not love. Is that why? Garrett hesitated. Why we had no children? Rebecca finished. Perhaps. Thomas blamed me, though we were rarely together as husband and wife. A flush colored her cheeks. The doctor said something about my womb being tilted, but I sometimes wonder if we simply weren't meant to conceive together. Garrett nodded thoughtfully. Catherine and I struggled for 3 years before Samuel came along. Then the others followed quickly. Your children are beautiful, Rebecca said sincerely. They miss their mother. Yes, and they need a woman's guidance, especially the girls. They spoke for over an hour, discussing practical matters, the ranch's needs, the children's routines, expectations of marriage. As their conversation concluded, Garrett took a deep breath. Miss Benson, Rebecca, would you consider coming to see the ranch tomorrow? Meet the children again in their home? Before either of us decides anything. Rebecca smiled. I would like that very much. The Flynn Ranch lay 8 miles from town, a modest but well-built home with a barn, corral, and bunkhouse for the 2 hired hands who helped with the cattle. As Rebecca descended from Garrett's wagon, 5 eager faces watched from the porch. We cleaned up, William announced proudly. Emma made your bed, added Eliza. I put flowers in your room. Rebecca glanced at Garrett, surprised. My room? He looked embarrassed. I told them not to presume, but they insisted on preparing the guest room. Just in case. The home was larger than Rebecca had expected, 4 bedrooms, a kitchen with a proper cookstove, and a comfortable sitting area with bookshelves. Though clean for her visit, she could see the signs of a household missing a woman's touch, mismatched curtains, unevenly hemmed tablecloths, and children's clothing that needed mending. Samuel showed her the barn with shy pride, explaining how he helped with the horses. The twins eagerly displayed their vegetable garden, while William proudly presented the chickens he helped tend. Little Margaret simply slipped her small hand into Rebecca's, leading her from place to place. When Garrett prepared to take her back to town that evening, Rebecca found herself reluctant to leave. The children's openness had touched her deeply, and watching Garrett with them, firm but tender, patient despite his exhaustion, had revealed a good man struggling under too many burdens. May I have a private word, Rebecca? Garrett asked as the children fed the chickens one last time. They walked to the edge of the yard, where wildflowers bloomed against the fence. In the golden evening light, with mountains silhouetted against the sky, Rebecca could see why he loved this place. I won't pretend it would be easy, Garrett said quietly. The work is hard, the winters can be harsh, and 5 children is more than most would willingly take on. They're wonderful children, Rebecca replied. They are, and they seem to like you very much already. He hesitated. Rebecca, I know this is sudden, but would you consider becoming my wife? Not just for the children or the ranch, but as a true partnership. Rebecca studied his weathered face, seeing honesty in his green eyes. We barely know each other, Garrett. True, but I've seen enough to know you're kind, patient, and brave. The rest we can learn together. He took her hands gently. I'm not offering romance from storybooks. I'm offering respect, security, and the chance to build something worthwhile. And if I'm truly barren? She asked, needing to be certain. Then we raise the 5 wonderful children we have, he answered without hesitation. Your worth isn't measured in childbearing, Rebecca. Tears welled in her eyes at words she'd never expected to hear from a man. I'd like to accept your offer, Garrett Flynn. His face broke into a relieved smile. Truly, yes, I'll be your wife, help with your children, and work beside you. She squeezed his hands. And perhaps, in time, we'll find more than partnership. Garrett's expression softened. I believe we will. They married 3 days later in Whitetail Creek's small church. Rebecca wore a new blue dress purchased with part of the money Garrett had planned to pay the marriage broker, an amount far greater than the $50 her parents had accepted. You're not being purchased, he'd insisted. The fee goes to the broker for arrangements, not to acquire you. The children stood beside them during the ceremony, Margaret clutching a small bouquet of wildflowers identical to Rebecca's. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Garrett's kiss was gentle, respectful, but held a warmth that promised more. That evening, after the children were asleep, Garrett showed Rebecca to the master bedroom. "I've moved my things to the small room down the hall," he explained. "This room is yours now." Rebecca looked at him in surprise. "But we're married." Garrett's expression was gentle. "Yes, but I want you to feel comfortable, not pressured. We can take time to know each other." His consideration nearly undid her. After Thomas's cold demands and her parents' callous dismissal, Garrett's respect felt like water to parched earth. "Thank you," she whispered. "But I don't want to begin our marriage with separation." Garrett studied her face carefully. "Are you certain?" "I am," she answered, taking his hand. "I choose this marriage, Garrett. All of it." Their first night together revealed a tenderness Rebecca had never known existed between man and wife. Garrett was patient and gentle, and when they finally came together, she discovered what her first marriage had lacked: true intimacy born of mutual respect and growing affection. The following months brought challenges as Rebecca adjusted to ranch life and mothering 5 children. There were tears and missteps, overcooked meals, misunderstandings with the children, moments when the responsibility overwhelmed her. But there were beautiful moments too. Teaching Emma and Eliza to embroider, helping Samuel with his reading, rocking William after nightmares, braiding Margaret's hair while singing the lullabies Rebecca's grandmother had once sung to her. With each passing week, the children turned to her more naturally, their grief for their mother never forgotten, but making room for love of their new mother. And with each passing month, Rebecca and Garrett found their partnership deepening into something more profound. On Christmas Eve, 6 months after their wedding, Rebecca sat beside the fire while the children arranged presents beneath their modest pine tree. Garrett watched her from across the room, his eyes tender. Later, after the children had gone to bed vibrating with excitement for the morning, Garrett pulled Rebecca into his arms. "I have something for you," he said, pressing a small package into her hands. "I wanted to give it to you privately." Inside the paper was a delicate silver locket. When she opened it, she found a tiny family portrait, all 7 of them, that he'd commissioned from a traveling photographer who'd passed through Whitetail Creek. "Oh, Garrett," she breathed. "Are you happy here, Rebecca?" he asked, suddenly vulnerable. "With us." "More than I ever dreamed possible," she answered truthfully. Her hand drifted to her abdomen, where a secret had been confirmed by the doctor just days earlier. "And I have a gift for you as well." His eyebrows lifted in question. "We're going to have a baby," she whispered. "In summer." Garrett's face transformed with astonishment. "But I thought—" "So did I," she admitted. "The doctor says sometimes these things are mysterious. Different husbands, different outcomes." "Are you pleased?" he asked carefully. "I am," she answered. "Though I admit I'm a little frightened." Garrett gathered her into his arms. "We'll face it together, like everything else." "I love you," Rebecca said, the words she'd been feeling for months finally spoken aloud. "Not just for giving me a family or a home, but for seeing value in me when others didn't." "I love you too," he replied, voice husky with emotion. "And I thank God every day that those 5 rascals upstairs led me to you." Summer 1871 brought the birth of Grace Flynn, a healthy daughter with her father's green eyes and her mother's chestnut hair. As Rebecca nursed her beneath the shade of the cottonwood tree, the other children played nearby, Samuel teaching the younger ones a new game. Garrett joined her on the bench, his arms sliding around her shoulders. "Happy?" Rebecca looked at their growing family, 5 children who had accepted her as mother, a husband who had become her truest friend and deepest love, and now this miracle daughter that defied what everyone had believed about her worth. "I never knew happiness like this existed," she answered truthfully. "My parents thought they were ridding themselves of a burden, but they gave me the greatest gift instead." "What gift was that?" Garrett asked, brushing a kiss against her temple. Rebecca smiled, leaning into his embrace. "The chance to find where I truly belong." As the Colorado sun dipped toward the mountains, casting golden light across their land, Rebecca Flynn, once sold for being barren, now surrounded by more love than she'd ever imagined possible, knew with absolute certainty that she was exactly where she was meant to be.